as I said, there are others as well. So it's very fascinating to me that that's taken on such a life of its own. I don't know if you know, but I'll just share. I write about it in the introduction to 60 Days. I don't think that's part of your regimen, introduction, because it doesn't fit into the days. But you know why I wrote that book? How it came to be? Anybody know? So I might as well tell you. I'm the author, so I could share. Around maybe, when did it first come out? It's at least now at least 20 years. Probably earlier, but I don't remember exactly the first edition. But I was, I've always been involved in trying to take Torah and serve as a bridge and make Torah relevant and personal and passionate and exciting, not just a mechanical experience. And Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, of course, that is all acutely amplified because people expect so much from these days and very often are disappointed. And I'm talking about both in the Frum community and outside of it, because you hear this is a day's renewal and Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year. But most people come out of those days. I would say all people at least, but I don't want to be too presumptuous. That Yazdim, did anything change this year after Yom Kippur? You're the same person like last year after Yom Kippur. So at some point, even if it's not spoken, it comes across, especially for young people, what is this, like a game we're playing? What happens? So the answer usually is spiritual things happen to you, even if you don't know it. That's usually the answer. But so here's the story. So I was invited by a friend of mine, Peter Himmelman, to come do Yom Kippur service. What was called an explanatory service. It was not just doing it like in a regular shul, but explaining everything in a way participatory. That's what they call it. I don't like the word beginner service because the Rebbe, first of all, didn't like that name because no Jew is a beginner. And so he said, let's do it together. He's a musician, just for the record, a rock and roll musician. He's a observant Jew today. He learned my classes here when he was in New York. He comes from Minnesota. If you want to drop names, he's married to Bob Dylan's oldest daughter. Okay. To how I often say, to Shop say Zusha Zimmerman's oldest daughter. So he said to me, come to Santa Monica, that's where he lived. We'll rent out a theater. There's a theater there, an old theater on Wilshire and Montana. And we'll call it a service for those that never went to Yom Kippur before. So I liked the idea. I said, how many people do you think are going to come? He says, who knows? We'll advertise that. He had a whole plan. And I liked the challenge. I liked the idea. So I flew there for Yom Kippur, Yom Kippur. And lo and behold, over 1,500 people showed up. The whole place was packed. And I guess the names, maybe our name spoke to them. Maybe they saw it was different. It was unique. It was going to be explanatory. It would be hands-on. So people wasn't just, I'm going to, Yom Kippur, the shuls are full in the United States, as you know. But that's because people by obligation or guilt or whatever it is in the consciousness of Jews to go Yom Kippur. And we really did, I think, a very great service to them because everything was explained. We had a chazan, he davened the whole thing, but I explained almost like nonstop. I didn't leave anybody like lost, just in Hebrew or just because everybody's saying it. It was like very hands-on. I explained things. We sang a lot. We had people read from sections. So chazan said the whole thing. So there was a real, there was no compromise service in that sense. But for the people, most of them, and we even asked by raise of hands, hundreds of them never went to Yom Kippur before, or they went 20 years ago, We also designated time, I planned it out, of having a conversation, meaning we'd have you call Nidra ended, let's say 9 o'clock at night. So afterwards, a discussion, questions and answers. And I would say out of 1,500 people, almost 1,400 remained, which means they wanted to be there and they enjoyed it and so on. And it was an open discussion. I shared a few thoughts and then people asked questions and it was provocative questions. I wanted to really, as I said, make it very participatory so people feel that they're partners in it, not just they're sitting and watching somebody pray for them. Then Yom Kippur Day, rather, same thing. We daven not as long as you usually find in, say, but we made a long hefsek after Musaf, between Musaf and Mincha, maybe 3 hours. And again, a discussion. And it was really fascinating. Afterwards, obviously, I got a lot of feedback from people. There was one particular woman contacted me the next year, and she said, are you going to do it again? We did it 2 years. I think it was after the second year, she asked me if we're going to do it again, and we weren't. Whatever reason, we didn't have the availability of the space. I don't even remember the reason. And she said to me, she's coming to New York for Yom Kippur, and is there a place where she can go to have such an experience? I knew there's no shul is really going to do it that way. So I sent her to a shul. I sent her to the Kalbach shul, because I thought there at least there's non-judgmental and there's a lot of singing. At least no necessarily explanation, but maybe she'd feel comfortable. And she called me after Yom Kippur, and she said it was nice. Everyone was very nice to her, but it was not meaningful really, in a spiritual level. And she told me, I'm into Zen Buddhism. That's my thing. And frankly, and she didn't mean this in any malicious way. She says, I think next Yom Kippur I'm going to stay home, and I'm going to do some Zen Buddhist meditations on Yom Kippur. Jewish woman. And again, she wasn't saying that cynically or maliciously. She was just really being sincere, because that speaks to my soul. Now, something in me, when she said that, it didn't bother. I mean, I'm not judgmental, so everyone can do whatever they want. But I'll tell you what happened. My competitive juices began to flow. And I felt, you know what? That's like, do we Jews have something in our own tradition that can be better than her Zen Buddhist stuff? And I decided, you know what? I said to her, without even knowing what my plan would be, I said, what happens if I show you how the prayers of Yom Kippur and the service is powerful meditations, even more powerful than the Zen Buddhist ideas? What do you think? She said, you would do that? I said, yeah, I would do it. So we designated time on the phone every week for like a month before Tishrei. Started at the beginning of Elul. I would go over with her main prayer, not the whole thing, obviously, Kol Nidre and Shema, and the different things, the unique things to Yom Kippur. And I dug very deep. I did my research, and she was astounded. So was I, frankly, because I had grown up with it, but I never really went to dig. I wasn't challenged to do so. You know, why is the service this way? Why is it so long? Why do we break it into 5 prayers, et cetera, et cetera? And from that, I saw the effect that had on her. Today, I should tell you, she's married with children. She's a Shomer Shabbos and everything. But it all began then because I was able to make it relevant to her and to myself in ways that I myself was surprised. And I realized the richness that lies in this tradition. I realized here, I'm a guy that grew up here. I'm pretty knowledgeable. I'm scholarly and so on. And yet I didn't know so much, especially on the Chassidish level, on the Pnimius level, on the Neshama level. So this was the genesis and the seeds of 60 days. I write about it briefly in the introduction to the story, not all the details. So it was hands-on. It wasn't just a book I decided I conceived of one day. I was just dreaming. It really came from a need. And that's the need that I identified in this woman, which reflects so many other people, and even in our community. Even though they may not admit it, but if you ask what is the relevance, personal relevance, explain to me what happened in Yom Kippur to you this year. Everyone will say it was a very holy day, I like the singing, and so on and so forth. But something transformative? Not really. Because the only way to do it is through a real journey. And there you have 60 days. That's the root of it. So the truth is that woman should be invited here, because it was without her, I would never have written it. Maybe I would have for other reasons. So, and I never expected it to be so successful. But I could tell you that I think the success is not because I wrote a good book, but because it was based on human experience. It wasn't just theories. I didn't sit down and come up with theories about Rosh Hashanah. It was actually hands-on. You can call it applied holidays, applied Chassidus. And so I thought it would be good to share with you all this. I hope you allow me to do that. Thank you. And of course, I see this as a catalyst that all of you who've been on this journey, and maybe more than once, people tell me even though they did it last year, they do it again. You always see new levels and new dimensions. And I always, for new additions, I'll probably add more details. I always find new stuff to add, whether in the footnotes or in the back. I don't know how extensively you do it. Do you do it with the notes in the back and the prayers as well?
We did last year, this year we didn't.
Yeah, because there's many layers to it, many levels to it. And thank God. As a matter of fact, and here's something I haven't really shared with anyone, but I'll share it with you. Because of the demand, people are asking me to do it all year round. And hence the title of this discussion here. What now, right? What'd you call it? What now? Okay, what's next? to do one, and I already began the plans for it, to do one for Cheshvan and Kislev every 2 months. And like every day, obviously not all the days are as like Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, but still every day has its power. And then do one for Cheshvan and Kislev would include Hanukkah. Then do one for Tevis and Shvat. One for the 2 others, in leap years. And one probably for Nisan for Pesach, because it's probably going to be a big one. And then Iyar Sivan, Tamazov, and then we're back to Elul Tishrei.
You remember for the Omer,
So the Omer could be incorporated for those 49 days.
Yeah.
But
because you have the Omer one. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Never considered doing one for that.
the Chassidus supply that I do Sunday night.
No, like writing something for all of like the Hasidic Yom and Taiwan on the calendar.
That would be included in this book. I would do it, of course. Yutas Kislev or so on. There's a woman, Basi Mishalov and Basi Cohen now in LA. She was inspired by my program, My Life Chassidus Applied. So she did a thing called Yadus for My Life. I don't know if you've seen it. It's like a course for students. But now Shluchim on it and all that. That goes through all the days of the year, special days, both the regular holidays and also Chassidisha, to make it very hands-on with field exercises for children and for students and so on. Check it out. Yadus for My Life. So maybe something that you're talking about. I didn't do it. She did it, but I looked at it. I looked it over. It's very well done. Very good. Like Yutas Kislev, not just the Alter Rebbe got out of prison, but what does it mean for you personally? Like, what does it mean, a lesson in life? So just as an aside. So great. That's a great question. What's next, right? What's that? So let me share a few thoughts on this matter. I would love to hear, but I don't know if we have the time, your own journey, but that would be a whole discussion of its own, because it's great to hear how you have experienced it. I'm sure it'll teach me a lot. But let me share this. One of the most powerful stories that always I live with all the time, both my work here when I'm in New York and when I travel especially, is a story with the Baal Shem Tov. And as a matter of fact, it may be in 60 days even. You'll tell me if it is. I'm trying to remember. I'm not, maybe at the end. Anyway, I'll tell the story because regardless, I think that story captures a very fundamental message that I think can really change people's lives. And I'm not saying that to be dramatic or to exaggerate. I really believe that. So there was a Jew, a chassid of the Baal Shem Tov and a friend of his as well. His name was Rabbi Chaim Rappaport. And the Baal Shem Tov sent him once on a mission. Shlichus. Sent him to some city to do something. I don't even know if we know what the mission was. But the story is exactly that. It's not relevant what the mission was. He comes back, mission accomplished. Great. So the Baal Shem Tov asks him, so how did you travel when you got to this place where I sent you to? So, it seems like, who really cares? What difference? I did the job. What difference whether I went east, west, north, or south? Got the job done. He didn't say that, but that was what he was thinking. The Baal Shem Tov insisted, I want to know, how did you travel? Okay, so Baal Shem Tov asked, so he began to say, he retraced the steps, and he came back and said to the Baal Shem Tov, okay, I traveled. The first night I stayed in an inn. The next morning I went further, and then the next night there was no inn, so I camped out at the side of the road. And in the morning I woke up, I said my prayers, my tefillas. I then sat down to have something to eat, so I washed my hands. And I said my prayers first, and then I washed my hands to eat. And I had a cup, and there was a little brook of water or spring of water at the edge of the road. So I went over, filled up the cup with water. And I made a blessing, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvarei, and drank the water. Okay? I'll drink a little water to demonstrate, like this. I made the bracha before. Okay, so the Baal Shem Tov jumped up in excitement. And what did he say? Listen to this. He said, from the beginning of time, that spring of water was waiting for you to come and make a blessing on it. That's what he said. And I think you can understand the power of the story, but let me elaborate. I'll tell you how I apply it to myself and how it's relevant to our discussion here. One of the big challenges people have is they say they're bored. You ever feel like you're bored? Children always telling their parents, I'm bored, I have nothing to do. which is another way of saying I want to watch a video. You know,
Yeah.
right? That's
Yeah.
it. Yes, exactly.
Important.
Yeah. You say, can we show them a video of me? That's not what they want. I tried it on my grandchildren. They say, I see you. I don't need to see a video of you. You're here, you know. I need a video. They're more entertaining, you know. Okay, so bored. But think of it this way. What is the Baal Shem Tov saying? The mission was accomplished, whatever that mission was. That every step a person takes, literally every step, is an expression, Hashem mitzadi gover kenono, that God leads the footsteps of a human being. That every step we take, and every move we make, and every breath we take, everything, every detail, from the beginning of time, was designated for you to be in that moment, in that space, and do something positive with it. So there's no such thing as boring. Everything is brimming with pulsating energy waiting to be released. In the language of Chassidus, from Kabbalah, that everything has a divine spark. The popcorn, the grapes, the chocolate peanuts, the taste of that, the sushi, everything. And you may come to a place, you may not even know why you're there. You may think, this man thought he's going to travel and he's had to get a drink of water. So he went for a drink of water. No, that itself could be the whole tachlis, the whole purpose of a creation, to waiting for him to come and make a blessing. So I've traveled the world many times, many places. And I always think of this story. Because I always think, who walked here before I did? And even if they did mitzvahs and they did good things, but I'm here now. And what do I have to do that maybe creation is waiting for me to accomplish? And this is not an exercise in arrogance. It's exercise in responsibility. And I can tell you, I've been to places where I don't think any Jew ever walked. So for sure, then it's like walking in the woods, you know, and there's like the road less traveled, the road that has not been paved, has not been yet tread through. There's a certain excitement. You're like a pioneer. You're breaking ground, new ground. So I want to say the first and most important thing, I think, in any type of inspiration, let's say 60 days, Elul and Tishrei are 2 months filled and rich with holidays and rich with meaning and all that. So then suddenly Simchas Torah ends, and now the end of the holiday, okay, it's a few more days, still under the aura of the holiday season, but then you get back to what we call back to regular life. And it could be very, a big downer. You know, it's like you have a high. I'm not talking about, we'll soon talk about people who don't even have the high. But let's say you do, you're inspired, but inspiration dissipates. That's the nature of it. You can have many magical moments in your life. I'm sure you've had moments, whether it's your own birthday or celebrations in your family or other things, and then a few days pass, and you're back to square one, so to speak. However, if you keep in mind that even though the holidays end in Tishrei, but the holiday really doesn't end because there's a holiday in every moment. So right now we're in Zayin Cheshvan, 7th of Cheshvan. It's already after the holidays. It seems like a regular Tuesday night, but like in the story, you recognize that within this night right now lies full of, it's potent with opportunity, whether it's the people you meet or it's experiences or even just taking a cup of water. And it creates a whole different sense of urgency that the world is waiting for you to do something positive. Now, I don't know if any of us can have that type of cognizance and focus and concentration 24/7. That's difficult to do. I'm actually speaking about that tomorrow night. I give a Wednesday night class on that topic. But we can all relate to it and maybe find each day at least a moment or two where you have that. So the challenge that we are now in is the holidays give us plenty of energy. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and especially if you went through 60 days, you see how each day has so much power and messages and lessons and directives and exercises. Keep a journal so you apply it to your life. However, now the challenge is, what can you do it on your own without the so-called the resource of the holiday? It's like someone trains you. So they say training is over. Now can you do it on your own? So in the beginning, you'll get help. It's like you begin to ride a bicycle. What do they call it? The training wheels. So in the beginning, you need training wheels because you can't balance. But then the training wheels are taken off. And now let's see, can you do it on your own? And really, all education is that way. Any good teacher is going to do that. They'll train you. They'll teach you. They'll hold your hand. They'll help you, support you, answer your questions. But then comes the day where a good teacher is going to say, you know what? I want to see if you can answer the question on your own. I want to see how you're going to do without me supporting you. That doesn't mean there isn't support. There, it doesn't mean in the back of it all, there's God as Hashem is always helping us. But it's really a vote of confidence. And the Rebbe says this in a very powerful sikha. He says, why is Cheshvan, in stark contrast to Tishrei, not one holiday in this month? Tishrei is filled with holidays, called Meruba B'Moedes, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, even in between, the Sarsimei Tshuva. Then comes the 4 days before Sukkot is another special day. Then Sukkot, of course, and Eshayin Rabbah, Shmini Atzeres, and Simchas Torah. I mean, the list goes on and on. It almost seems like unbalanced. Why don't you take a few holidays and stick them into Cheshvan? Why stick them all like into one month? Comes Cheshvan, suddenly a drastic drop. Not one holiday. Yeah, we have the Chassidish holiday of Chav Cheshvan, you have Zayin Cheshvan, but it's not a holiday, not in Chumash, not even in Minig Yisrael, like Simchas Torah. So it's a big contrast. Once it comes, and the Rebbe, I remember that Fabrengen said, this was, I believe, 1989. It was the Parshas Lech Lecha, I think, Tov Shinun. And the Rebbe said, he went through all the months. Kislev, we have holiday again. We have Chanukah, and for Chassidim Yutas Kislev, right? In Tevis, we have Kislev Tevis, we have Asara B'Tevis. Even though it's a fast day, but it will be a holiday. It's a special day. In Shvat, we have Tu B'Shvat. I'm not even talking about the Chassidish holidays. In Adar, we have Purim. In Nisan, we have Pesach. In Iyar, we have every day we count the Omer as a mitzvah. Sivan is Shavuos. Tammuz is the 17th of Tammuz. We have Tisha B'Av. And of course, Elul, the whole month of Elul is a month of Rachamim and Melech B'Sada and so on. Only month in the year, the Rebbe said Cheshvan. So it sounds like odd. So Tishrei filled with holidays, suddenly a drop into no holidays at all. And the Rebbe's answer is both profound and simple. And it's a tremendous lesson in life. Because Hashem says, now I've given you all the holidays. I've given you the wings. I've given you the tools. I've given you the training wheels. Now I want to put you in a situation where you don't have any holidays. And how will you do? Because if there's even one holiday in Cheshvan, so you're still not on your own. Someone is still throwing you a life raft. They call it a life vest, a lifeline. That's why Cheshvan is that way. So if you think of it that way, then it's the exact opposite. What's next? What's next is that now is the real opportunity to show what you can do. You know, maybe my challenge would be is I did 60 days, now you do Cheshvan. Do a book on Cheshvan. I give you some tools, and now you do something. But no, I will do it, but it doesn't stop. So I would say my challenge, I think our challenge, and the challenge also to what you're doing here, is now to take those 60 days and see how can we do on our own when you don't have necessarily that daily message. How do you find the message? Not that there isn't a message, but now we have to find it on our own. We have to dig on our own. Before this, it was given as a gift, and we have to follow along, but that's really the ultimate gift. You know, the greatest gift for parents, for example, healthy parents, I should add, is when their children take wing, right? When they leave home and they build their own families. There's nothing more powerful, walking your children to the chuppah. One day, in Mr. Hashem, you'll all be doing that. Amen. First to your own chuppah, and then to the children's chuppah. Let's do it in the right order, right? Yeah, you get the idea. Why is it so powerful? You know what's so? Because you think, I want to protect my children. I want them to be near me. You know, once they go out in the world, they not just the child cries when it goes to school the first day, the mother also cries. Or camp.
Even more than
right. And then not just camp, and then they become an adult. And yet, a healthy parent is not going to just suffocate their children. They're going to let them. They want them, because the greatest gift is to see your children can stand on their own feet. So yes, the first time a child walks, it's going to fall. So you think a woman, a mother with rachmanis and compassion is going to not let the child fall. That's not correct. That would be a big mistake.
you just look the other way.
No, you have to be nearby. You show the child, I'm there. And you say, come to me, I'm here. I'm not saying you completely abandon the child, but you want them to walk on their own. The only way to walk on your own is to fall once, twice, 3 times. And that's what teaches you how to walk. So it's not because we want the pain or the falling. We want to be able to stand on our own feet. It's like a fundamental principle in everything in life. I can tell you from my own experience, many people who are, let's say, introduced to Yiddishkeit but you don't let them fly on their own. You don't let them have their own voice and just tell them what to do all the time. That clips their wings does not really create true growth. So you have this a beautiful analogy. Well, it's not so beautiful story, but it's a great analogy for this. So you all know that a caterpillar, right, turns into a butterfly. But in order to turn into a butterfly, it does not just automatically turn into one. It has to go into, it's called a chrysalis, into a cocoon. It goes into the state where it lives as a caterpillar for a while, and then slowly it builds a cocoon around itself, a chrysalis they call it, and it spends time in there, whatever amount of time, and then slowly the chrysalis, like an egg, starts to crack open, and slowly a butterfly emerges. So the most beautiful monarch butterfly or any other butterfly is really a caterpillar with wings. Caterpillar is not so beautiful. The butterfly usually is. So once an individual sees a cocoon stuck in a tree, and he sees the cocoon is starting to open up, and he sees the butterfly is struggling to get out. So in his great compassion, says, why should I have to struggle? He went, brought a scissors or a knife, and he very gently cut the cocoon to let the butterfly free itself. You know what happened? To his dismay, to his tragic dismay, the butterfly he sees opens up, and the butterfly will not take wing, does not fly. So he pushes it, he tries to fan. Maybe the butterfly is not used to flying yet. No, the butterfly would never fly the rest of its life. You know why? Because when a butterfly struggles to get out of the cocoon, pressure forces liquid to go into its wings to create the proper aerodynamics necessary to fly. And because this guy in his great compassion, quote unquote, thought he'll have Rahmanas, he basically, the butterfly never was pressured and the liquid never went into its wings. So its wings were too weak. So the butterfly was grounded the rest of its life. So sometimes what we think is compassion can actually be the exact opposite, something criminal. And I say this because this is, if you want to translate it into psychological terms, and I'm sure I'll use this when we do the book on Cheshvan, okay? That Tishrei, we're lifted on the wings of Tishrei. It's true, we need direction, we need guidance, and hopefully 60 days helps do that. But you're riding on. Rosh Hashanah is filled with messages, filled with power, filled with energy, Shefer, and all the other things that Rosh Hashanah consists of, renewal. Same with Yom Kippur and Sukkot. Cheshvan, we are now left, so to speak, to do it on our own. But that brings out energy that you can never bring out in Tishrei. Because that pressure, so to speak, the fact that we don't have the help, we don't have someone trying to cut open the chrysalis, and yes, it's the pressure, and sometimes even feeling lost, that actually can be the catalyst for the greatest growth. And that is what happens now. So it's not like a downer. Okay, here we are, we're in the heights, the mountains of Tishrei, and now we're back to normal. No, now the normal is expecting us to look deeper and dig deeper and use our energy to discover the sparks, to discover what Rabbi Chaim Rappaport discovered, as the Baal Shem Tov celebrated, that this water was waiting for you. And that's not exclusive to Tishrei. That's happening right now and tomorrow and the next day. And every interaction you're going to have with friends, with strangers, wherever you are, is waiting for you to do something. I find that tremendously empowering, unbelievably empowering message, that everything is waiting for you. As I said earlier, I don't know if we could always live with that type of awareness, but you can always, at least once a day, live with that. And if you think that way, then you transform even this so-called dry month into a rich month as well. But now you're doing it. Not Hashem is doing it for us. And we're receiving it, and we get credit for that. But we're on the receiving end. Now we're on the giving. Can you give? Now, giving, you may not be able to give as much as you take, but when you give, it's much more empowering, much more qualitatively more powerful. The Gemara says a person has more pleasure in one measure that they earn on their own than 9 measures given to you as a gift. So Tishrei is 9 measures. It's $9,000 is more than $1,000. And you can buy more and you can spend more, etc. But 1,000 earned on your own, you won't blow as fast, and you have earned it, so it's yours. So even though it's 1,000, you say, I'd rather have that because I earned it than 9,000 as a gift. And this is a theme that goes across all levels of our lives. Whatever we're doing, you have that element of initiating from the bottom. If you know little Chassidus, is the expression that Tishrei is like a Shrusa de La'ela, an awakening from above, and Cheshvan is a Shrusa de Latata, which is the effort we make from below. And that always reaches deeper places. It may be harder, but it reaches deeper places. It's harder because you don't have the so-called ostensible support and all the revelations. So that's the challenge. And it's a great challenge because it's much easier, frankly, to come to a party and just let the party, you ride on the party. It's much harder to go home and you're not at a party and still be able to create a party out of it. It's like the Baal Shem Tov says, the difference between a miracle and a natural event. I'm sure you heard this, if you haven't. And again, I think it's in 60 days as well. So it's not a test, but I think I included it. Maybe not. What's the difference between a miracle and natural event? You know what he says? One thing only. Frequency. Frequency. If the sun were to rise once in our lifetime, everyone would come rushing out with camera crews and our families. Look at this sight. You know, the ball rising in the horizon. But since it happens every morning, who even looks at it? Who even cares? Why? Because we need a new novelty. We need high. We need a new rush of excitement. And that it gets monotonous if it happens more than once. But that doesn't make it less of a miracle. It just means you're not appreciating it as much. So Baal Shem Tov says, you know what a real miracle? It's not the parting of the sea on Eastern Parkway. A miracle is seeing the extraordinary within the ordinary. Think about that. Seeing the extraordinary within the ordinary. Yes, seeing a cup of water, and that cup of water lies infinity, lies the divine purpose of your life. So there are times when you need the times you need the dramatics, you need the fireworks. That's Tishrei. But there are times where we have to find the extraordinary within the ordinary. It appears ordinary, but nothing is ordinary. Nothing is ever, what you see is never what you get. You know, everybody, the cliche, the ultimate cliche, that is the falsest cliche I've ever heard, is don't judge a book by its cover. Can you tell me someone who doesn't judge a book by its cover? Everybody judges a book by its cover. That's why it's $1 billion industry. Book cover design, packaging, even beauty, cosmetics, all that. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Why? Because we do worship and we're seduced by the externals. Something looks good. Yeah, we may use our minds and say maybe it's not so good. It's only sugar-coated. But initially, we all react to covers. That's how it is. We're superficial. However, the truth is it's not the case. Everything is what you see is not what you get. And nobody wants to be judged by what they look like. There's a person inside of you. Everyone has a personality. That's not so obvious. So Cheshvan is teaching us to look inside and discover that extraordinary within the ordinary. I'll share a story about that, but you want to ask something?
Yeah, you were saying about seeing miracles. Is that the same concept of like noticing structures?
Yeah, in a way. You know, we have, Chassidus says that there are 3 levels. There's nature, there's hidden miracles within nature, and then there's revealed miracles. So like the story of Purim, if you were living during that time, you wouldn't see any miracle. It's a bunch of natural events, but when you look in retrospect, you connect the dots, you suddenly see everything was choreographed exactly to happen the way it happened. So if you lived, it was around a period of 9 years. You know this? From the time Achashverosh made the party till the end of the story, it's around 9 years. So if you lived there, you would never, Achashverosh makes a party. He happens to invite Vashti. Vashti happens to being killed by him. Then he happens to be looking for a new wife, and it happens to be Esther. All this happening over years. Then Bixen and Vesheresh conspiring against the king. Mordechai happens to overhear it. Then a little later, Mordechai happens to be, the king happens to have insomnia, he can't sleep. So they read him a book and he tells them the story of Mordechai saving his life. So you look at a bunch of events, nothing's miraculous about them. It could happen anytime. But then you look at in retrospect, you look back, you say, 1 second. Esther was exactly in the right place, and Mordechai was exactly in the right place, and Achashverosh was exactly in the right place, and a miracle happens. Take out one of those details. That's exactly like I said before with the water. The whole creation is set up in a certain way. So Hashgacha Pratis is usually seen more as, basically Hashgacha Pratis is the real good English expression for his divine choreography. That's what it means.
It's so much better than providence. You're like, what?
right? Providence, Rhode Island, right? They say, yeah, oh, I've been there. I once said Divine Providence. They said, yeah, I visited there. And they said it was Rhode Island, Providence, Rhode Island. So just like when you say paradise, someone says, yeah, it was an amusement park, has a paradise island or something, you know. The point being is, yes, that there's a story behind the story. And we Jews, especially, Chassidim particularly, we're trained to think, always think of the inner choreography of your life. And it changes everything. It even changes negative things. Because when you see something negative, if you look on face value, you think it's a negative. But if you know there's a deeper story, maybe there's a narrative. You know, think of it like a film, right? Every frame of the film is one detail. But imagine one frame is very scary, or one frame is very negative. But you have to see the story continue. The story is not over yet. Many of us don't see it through. So we take an experience, whether it's a joyful experience or it's a sad experience, and we see it at face value. That's it. That's my life. My life is over because some really bad thing happened. But that's never life. Life continues. It's a continuum. It's a journey. Just like 60 days is a journey. The journey continues after 60 days. It continues through the year. However, there are parts of the journey where you're up on a mountain, like Tishrei, with all the gifts and all the blessings. And then the journey comes more to a place where it's a little more, as I said, drier land. You don't have the holidays, you don't have all the excitement, you don't have all the hoopla and all that. But then what we look for is the extraordinary within the ordinary. I would challenge you, go ahead, try it out tomorrow. Think of things, or even tonight, think of mundane things you're doing and look for something extraordinary within it. You'd be surprised what you would find. We can't be lazy, to be honest. We can't be lazy, and we have to work at it. Now, as I said before, step by step, I wouldn't suggest anyone try this cold turkey. You know, I once said this in a class of mine in Manhattan, and a guy started calling me afterwards. He says, you know, every headline in the New York Times looks to me like God is speaking to me. So I told him, I said, Steve,
unsubscribe from the New York Times.
Even though what I said, no, they don't find it in the Wall Street Journal, doesn't matter which. So I said, listen to me. I know I said it, but don't take me that seriously. You know, what I meant is that in concept is that way. This doesn't mean that every time you look at something, you see a taxi pass you by in Fifth Avenue, that's a lesson. Everything is a lesson, but let's just start with some basics. You know, because you could go overboard if you don't do it in a paced and a proper way. So the story I wanted to share, and I'm happy to open this up for questions, right? If you like. It happened in one of my classes. I give a class every Wednesday night. This goes back to long before you were all born. Back in 1982, as the class began. So it's one of the longest running class, maybe the longest running class today in the world. What's 82 to now? 37 years. 37, 38 years, yeah. Unbroken chain. Every Wednesday night I began my office. Then I continued in my home and then went to Manhattan and at one place. Now it's online every Wednesday night. And probably by now, over 40,000 people have come to this class, maybe more. I didn't even record it at those days. 82, there was, it was a dinosaur age. Mail was delivered with camels and donkeys, snail mail, as they call it. And so there was no internet, there was no technology, there was not even a computer. I used a good old typewriter. You know what a typewriter is? No, seriously, how would you know? Really? In museums. But who uses a typewriter?
We had a typewriter.
Okay, that's amazing. We only had typewriters. There was no such thing. Okay, so you know what it is. Remember, no word processing. It means if you want to move a paragraph, you can't move it on a piece of paper. You have to retype the whole thing. Can you imagine? Now today you just manipulate it. Okay. No fax machines, nothing. It's a story of its own. So I began my class those years. This class is going on now for all the years. And I remember, it was always a very informal type of class with people with questions and comments and arguments. In the early years, the classes would go very late, sometimes in the early wee hours. So I remember once after the class was over, and I'd spoken about this theme of seeing the extraordinary within the ordinary. Okay? Seeing that, yeah. So everybody was sitting around the table and munching on coffee beans and whatever else there was there. And they were sharing what they do. And one of them was a pediatrician who delivered babies. He worked in New York Hospital, which is on FDR and York, FDR, like near 70th Street, 71st Street. The 8th floor is the delivery floor. That's where children are born. And he shared the following. He was at the time a secular fellow. And he said, today when you spoke about miracles, I realized the beauty and blessing of my life. Here I am, he says, on the 8th floor in New York Hospital, delivering children. I've delivered maybe thousands of children. And who's in the room? It's a very quiet room. There's the mother, of course, an attending nurse, sometimes another person. And down below is the FDR. And the FDR, during the day especially, but even at night, is always packed. And you hear the contrast. He said, this quiet of the room, and down below is like the rush hour. And you hear brakes screeching, and you hear horns honking, and you can sense tempers flaring. And I think to myself, where are they all rushing to? Some people rushing just to rush. Some people rushing to a party, to an event, to get to work, to get home from work. And as I said, many rush just to rush. They're not going anywhere, actually. And here I am, I'm blessed to give birth to a child, the greatest miracle of all. And here there's no bumper-to-bumper traffic, and there's no horns, no one's pushing to see this miracle. To be part of that within a world that everybody's busy with their rush hours, and I could be blessed to see the birth of the miracle of beginnings, which is the miracle of birth, makes my whole life worth it. That's how he phrased it. So I remember that night, I drove back from Manhattan, and I decided to drive down to FDR. I wanted to experience what he said. And yes, for some strange reason in New York, during rush hour, sometimes there's no traffic, and suddenly 12 o'clock at night, there's filled with traffic, construction, or whatever the reason. Anyway, I'm driving by, and I experienced what he said. And I thought he put it so well, from his own perspective, that yes, everybody who experiences birth, or thinks about it even, it's a miracle. Where does this child pop out from? Suddenly, how does a life? And here we are, adults, fully blown adults with issues and complexities and therapy and everything that's going on in our lives. Where did that come from? It's a miracle. But you know what? That miracle, as much as we know it's a miracle, the door closes and we go back to ordinary life. So if you want to put it in a Hasidic terminology, it means on the surface, everything looks very regular. But beneath the surface is unbelievable miracles. All the time, not just in Tishrei and Cheshvan too. And that's our challenge. How do you find them? How do you discover them? The word for nature in Hebrew? You know the word? Teva. You know what that means? What does Teva mean? I know it means nature. But where does the root of the word come from? It comes from Tavu B'Yamsuf, hidden or submerged. Submerged in an ocean. What happens when you throw an object, a stone or a stick or anything, into the sea, into the ocean? It disappears. Now, if you did not know what's going on beneath the ocean, you'd think, nothing really happening there. There's a few fish, because you see a few fish from time to time. Maybe you see the fin of a whale, or whatever it may be. Would you ever imagine, if we didn't have cameras, and no one ever went down below, scuba diving, whatever, that there's such a complex world down there? No way. Because that's what nature is. It conceals and actually deceives us into thinking there's nothing beneath. It creates this nature. The sun comes up every morning, day and night, the seasons, everything seems so regular. When in truth it's irregular. It's completely extraordinary. It just, as I said before, it's a bunch of miracles happening 1 minute after the other, to the point that we can convince ourselves, that's nothing to look at. That's regular stuff. Cheshvan challenged us to think that the regular is really not regular, and the ordinary is really not ordinary. And it's really a way of looking at ourselves that way as well. There's always more going on. But as I said, it's a avodah. It takes work. It takes a challenge to get there. And it's good to have friends because we can remind each other. So even if one of us gets bored or one of us loses sight of what's really happening, you have other people who can help remind. And I think that is really where we're at right now in this month, where we really test it to see what happened on Tishrei. Can you now unpack it in a month like this and prove that the ordinary is extraordinary in every detail of our lives? So that is, I hope I did justice to this in a summation, the challenge that we have, but also not just the challenge, the opportunity that we all have to be able to use this time in that best possible way. I want to add one footnote which may be very useful and helpful. The Rebbe epitomized this. As many of you know, I worked for the Rebbe. I wrote the Farbrengens, Shabbos and Yontif, where no recordings were made and no notes were taken. So we had to verbatim memorize, sometimes 6-7 hours. So I'm not talking about, it's not a small thing, not to memorize 5 lines. We're talking about sometimes 100 to 120 pages, not redundant. That's what we had to do. Not just remember it, but also write it. So I had the privilege of doing that. I was the main writer from 1979 through the Rebbe had the stroke in 1992. Of course, I had access to the Rebbe, asked a lot of questions, challenged the Rebbe, if you want to put it that way. And the Rebbe edited a lot of the material that I prepared. And I can tell you, one of the things that I always marveled is the Rebbe's mode of leadership. Very unique. He was epitomized what I just said. He personified real leadership because the Rebbe never intervened. As much as the Rebbe inspired, as much as the Rebbe's authority commanded attention, yet he never took away people's ability to walk on their own. And the Rebbe always would pause before that final step. He never told somebody, you must do this. He said what he feels should be done. But then he always wanted people to embrace it on their own. And he always would say, I meet you halfway. I will give you the instructions, but you have to mobilize. I'm not going to draft you in the army. You have to draft yourself. And consistently, the Rebbe did this from the first time first Farbrengen, when he assumed leadership in 1951. One of the first things the Rebbe said after the Maimer, he said, Bossi Legani, and it was the official so-called acceptance of leadership. Then the Rebbe said that in America there's a custom that when you assume a new position, you make a statement. He spoke in Yiddish, but that's what he said, a statement. It says when you follow the customs of the country. So the Rebbe said, I'm going to make a statement, and he started this whole statement. And part of the statement, what the Rebbe said? He said, my father-in-law, the Friedrich Rebbe, would say, Fegelach in bosom. I don't know if you know the expression. The expression means like birds in the bosom. But it's an expression in Yiddish that means don't deceive yourself into thinking that I'm going to now do the job for you. He appointed me, and you're going to sing songs for me, you're going to send me pans, and you're going to, whatever, all the different things, and I'm going to do the job for you. No. Everyone has their own pekel. That's the Rebbe's words. Everyone has their own baggage. Everyone has their own responsibilities, and you have your own battles. He says, I will not decline from helping, but basically I will help those that help themselves. So the Rebbe epitomized this whole thing. Yes, I'll give you plenty of strength, and I'll give you directives and teachings and inspiration. But at the end of the day, there's going to be a part that you're going to have to do on your own. That's what the Rebbe said. And I saw with my own eyes so many times how the Rebbe lived up to that. It wasn't just a nice line. Consistently, that was the Rebbe's approach. It was always about what are you going to do to meet me halfway, basically. So that's like real cheshvan. If you want, I don't know what the schedule here and the time is. I have a nice story or two I can share about this, but you may want to ask some questions. So I'm not sure here. I can talk, as you know. I can go on and on. So I need to have like Ad Kana Kof Aleph type of thing, if you know what I mean. But you want me to share the story or two? Okay. So I still have your attention. That's the bottom line. Good. Okay. So the first story I want to share is it was a while I taught in Beis Rivka 12th grade for a while, back in the 90s. And I remember 2 girls came over to me, students, and they said they want to ask me a question. They both were invited to go to Melbourne, Australia, in seminary. And they both wrote to the Rebbe, and they got very different answers. And they're friends, and they want to understand why would the Rebbe answer so differently to both of them. Is it some type of spiritual thing? Is it a Gilgal thing, reincarnation thing? They were looking for some explanation. So I said, do you mind me reading the letters that you wrote to the Rebbe? The Rebbe wrote to one of them, before I continue, to one of them he gave a blessing to go. The other one he said, go ask your parents. That was the difference of the answers. So I said, do you mind if I read what you wrote? No problem. They bring me both letters. And here's what one girl wrote. One girl wrote, I'm enthusiastic about this offer, going to a new country, distant place. And I'm happy and eager to be able to fulfill the Rebbe's shlichus there and meet new people, new culture, new customs. That was essentially her tone. The second girl wrote that I have this invitation to go to Melbourne. However, here's the big howevers. I'm going to be away from my family. So it's a culture. I don't know what kind of culture, what kind of food they have. I'm going to miss my friends. She gave a whole basically list of reasons that she's going to be very lonely. Basically, she wrote to the Rebbe, I'm not going to have my teddy bears. She didn't say those words, but you get the idea. So you tell me, who did the Rebbe answer what? You don't need to be a rocket scientist to know. To the girl that wrote like an adult, and she's eager, the Rebbe said, go. Give her a strong blessing. To the girl that wrote like a child, what do you tell the child? You go to your parents. You ask your parents. So if someone didn't know what they wrote to the Rebbe, you think it's a mystical thing. It's a mystical thing. This neshama belongs in Melbourne, and this neshama belongs in New York. No, it's nothing to do with mysticism. There's no mystery here altogether. It's simply, what did you do? What did you bring to the table? You bring to the table as an adult, the Rebbe responds to you as an adult. You talk like a child, he'll talk to you like a child. So many people think the Rebbe was very, very calculated when it came to this. He wanted people to make an effort. And commensurate to your effort, the Rebbe would respond. And he sometimes responded really a lot. That's one story. Second story is with my father. My father had a very close relationship with the Rebbe, if you can call it that. He was a journalist, and he went to many yechidus, and many of his yechidus lasted hours and hours. The Rebbe talked to him about many different things, worldly matters, Israel, politics, you name it. So once in one of the yechidus, this was a big famous yechidus people talk about, because he went into the Rebbe yechidus at 11 o'clock at night, came out 6 o'clock in the morning. So 7 hours, maybe the longest yechidus, 7 hours. It was after he returned from Russia. My father visited Russia before the days that it opened up, 1971. Anyway, middle of the yechidus, there's a lot about this yechidus. If I bring all night about it with you. But in the middle of the yechidus, the Rebbe suddenly smiles and says to my father, calls him by his name. My father was Geshem Ber. Says, Geshem Ber, Efsher, maybe you want to make an interview with me. You're a journalist. That was the Rebbe said with a smile. So my father said to the Rebbe, my father had a certain informal tone with the Rebbe. He said to the Rebbe, I can ask anything. You asked me to make an interview. I can ask anything. So the Rebbe said, this is America. There's no censorship. You can ask anything you want. This happened twice, actually. And the time I'm referring to is with the Rebbe, my father asked the Rebbe this question. What bothers the Rebbe most of all things? Good question, right? What troubles the Rebbe most? And the Rebbe said like this. He said, I'll answer with a story. And I guess it's more of an analogy. He says there was once a man, a very God-fearing man, like Eev, who had everything, all the blessings of wealth, of family, prestige, honor, everything. But in the Malachim, the Satan came, I don't know if the Rebbe used that word, he said, they came to Hashem and said, yeah, he's a very God-fearing man because he has all the blessings. What happens if you take away the blessings? Let's test him. So God tested him and took away first his wealth, then his family, then his health, and he was left with nothing. And then finally, the last thing was the only thing he had left was his body. And he was struck with leprosy, with a type of leprosy. Terrible itching, the Rebbe said. And then finally there was Rachmanis from heaven. So Hashem said, Acha sha'alti, give him one request he can make, whatever he asks for, we'll grant him. So the Rebbe telling my father this. So that moment, the Rebbe says, when he was heard that he can make any request, he had a terrible scratch on his back. That was so annoying that, a request, give me a back scratcher. The Rebbe called it a sherbel. A sherbel is like a shard. Something to, when you have that scratch and you can't reach it, what would you do? Anything to get a back scratcher. So that's what he got. He got himself a back scratcher. He could ask for anything and he got a back scratcher. Because at that moment, he was uncomfortable. So the Rebbe said, what bothers me most is people could ask of me everything. The Rebbe said, precious stones and jewels and riches, and they're asking me for back scratchers. That's what the Rebbe said. How do you like that?
That bothered the Rebbe?
Yeah. The Rebbe said that, yeah. The Rebbe himself said that, yes. That bothered the Rebbe tremendously. That means that people are behaving like children. They're asking for little childish games. instead of asking for the greatest things possible. Yeah.
Or more like they're complaining about their itch instead of asking for
Right.
beautiful things.
Yeah, for great things, for big things, big vision things.
Like no, it's like we limit ourselves to even wanting those things and welcoming that. Like it's like.
Yeah, but when you have the opportunity, if you have the opportunity, you have the opportunity.
But then like the biggest thing to only be asking for is Mashiach.
So maybe you should ask that.
I did. I went through a period where I never in davening. I never.
Most people
Mamash
wrote to the
never
Rebbe
asked for
about
anything
a
for
back
yourself.
scratcher. Okay, so the Rebbe would be
But that's
proud.
almost like you have to daven for things for yourself. I was like, but if everything I possibly could need comes from it when Mashiach comes, why should I possibly daven for anything else?
So good. I guess the Rebbe was not referring to you. He's referring to people who ask for back scratchers. There are people like that. I hope you know. Not everyone's on your level. You know. So the point is the partnership of doing our part, and when you do your part, you get great gifts from above. But you have to do your part, and that's where we are right now. So let me conclude with this: that Hashem should bless you all, just as you did the 60-day journey. The journey continues. I hope you know that. It's just a different leg of the journey. Now the leg consists of you have to do a little more, and you have to dig a bit deeper and take the initiative. And when you take the initiative, you get great results in return. So every month has its role, and that's the role that we're in now. So Hashem should bless us, and we already, Jews over the thousands of years, have taken many initiatives. And as you just said, we should already be Zeichet HaMashiach. It says the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi will be built in Cheshvan, interestingly. So may it happen in our time and quickly, and with all your beautiful effort, the Noshim Tzidkanias, the Bonus Tzidkanias, the righteous women and young women of our generation, the Rebbe said time and again, will bring the Geula and Mashiach. So it's an honor for me to be here, sitting as an inferior male in the presence of such righteous women who are going to lead us all to the Geula. So I thank you. Anybody wants to ask anything? I'm happy to answer a few questions. And if you don't have questions, it's also fine. But, you have an itch?
No. I was just thinking, like, does that mean to ask over, like, the way Hannah asked the concept of Tzilas Hannah? Like,
that's a good example, because a child is not an itch, God forbid. She asked for the real thing, yeah. That's an example.
like Mashiach is the ultimate. I mean, I guess the truth is you can ask for anything, actually.
But I will say this, look, I think everybody should ask for Mashiach all the time. But I think it would also be helpful if we knew what Mashiach was and do something about it, not just ask for it. Because the Rebbe also said that. He says, yes, cry ad masai, but he also said he wants us to do something. So since you brought it up, I might as well say this. If you talk about Aveda b'koyach atzmei, that was the Hebrew Chassidic expression of what I was explaining now. The idea of self-initiated effort, not from above. And that was like the cornerstone of the Rebbe's whole leadership. So where did it tragically most express itself? Right now, where we are now. Until Gimel Chav Zayin Oder, the Rebbe was shining, speaking, and lifting us up. And once the Rebbe had the stroke, and I don't know the mysteries of God. I'm not going to go explain these things. I don't have an explanation. And then Gimel Tammuz. So where we left now, 25 years later, this is like the ultimate cheshvan, if you wish. Where you don't have the Giluyim, you don't have the revelations and all those beautiful things. But now is the ultimate test. What will we do? When the Father is there and you see him, it's one thing. What happens when the Father is concealed? That's the real test. Will you rise to the occasion? So if you really want to spell out the stakes and the consequences, it's that. What will we do? I'm a little older than all of you, so I've been around 25 years ago, and around 50 years ago as well. And I've seen what things have happened in the last 25 years. And I have to say, and I'm a very optimistic guy, I don't say this with any pleasure. I do not think we rose to the occasion. And the best proof is Mashiach is not here. Because the Rebbe did give us a job. He didn't just say we should yell and cry. Yes, that's part of it. But he also gave us work to do. It's really not the theme of this evening. That's why I didn't go in there. But if you really want to know what's not a back scratcher, is to focus on actually what can we do to bring the Geula. I know the next question everyone says is, okay, what are we supposed to do besides cry out and pray? Well, I have thoughts and suggestions on that. I don't know if this is the place, But let me put it this way: you have to ask that question, even if you don't have an answer. You don't begin. It says, "Question of a wise person is half an answer." You have to ask a question: what is the strategy? What strategy that we can employ each of us in our own particular way? Not talking about no one's asking you to create miracles. The Rebbe never said we should go build the third Beis Hamikdash, and we can't bring Tchias HaMesim either. But there are things we can do. And I look at it this way: you're the next generation from us, and we did not deliver. So I say to myself, so what will the next generation do? What will you guys do? That's how I think we have to ask if we want to really go into this topic. As I said, it wasn't my intention to go here, but you want to really talk business as adults, not as children, not back scratching stuff. Yeah, the Rebbe wanted a big vision, and that was the fulfillment that the Geula comes, and the Geula is not just for people in Crown Heights and Borough Park and religious communities. It's 7.5 billion people on this planet. You ever think of that? 7.5 billion. That means that we have to create something that's bigger than Google and Microsoft and Amazon and
That's
Apple
a lot of pressure.
and Facebook all put together. You know what?
With joy.
Adults, listen, the Rebbe treated us like adults. And he said, I want you to do something about this. Yeah. Listen, you can always say it's not for me and you can pull back. But since we're talking, I did hear what the Rebbe said, and I do understand what he meant. So I feel, since you already brought it up, you want to not talk about back scratches, you want to talk about Mashiach. This is Mashiach. It's not just, I'm going to cry tomorrow in davening. That's nice too, but that doesn't take a lot of effort, let's be honest. That's just, you try your best, and it could be heartfelt. I'm not saying it's not real, but it's not work, real work. So of course you're going to ask, what does real work mean? Let me tell you, 7.5 billion people and counting means you have to reach them. Now, I know nobody thinks in those numbers. You'd say, if I could reach 1,000 people, I'd be happy. If I could reach 5 people, I'd be happy. But remember, 7.5 billion people is 7.5 billion individuals like us. And today, with technology, you could reach. And the Rebbe said, if you try, you will succeed. He said, the world is ready. So, as I said, this already is going into the area where I think is our real, the real final frontier that the Rebbe left us work to do. But it's not, again, not the theme of this evening. This doesn't mean it's not important to talk about. I just don't want to overwhelm you here with this. So, but I can't go away without mentioning it since you already brought up the contrast of back scratching and Mashiach. So I decided I'll just go for it.
Thank you.
Did the Rebbe charge you with something very specific to do?
The Rebbe charged us all. I cannot say he called me in and charged me. The Rebbe said many times that when he speaks at a Farbrengen, even if there's 10,000 people there, he's speaking to each individual in Yechidus. That you shouldn't be looking at everybody, it means everybody else. So what the Rebbe said at a Farbrengen, I took as if he said one-on-one to me. Yes, so I would answer yes, but not in the conventional sense that he called me in and said that. I saw Farbrengen as speaking one-on-one, and I think everybody has to see it that way. So yes, I do. Everything all my work that I do, from the morning I wake up, from the moment I wake up, and every moment of my waking hours that I work is toward this end, is to try to use my skills to communicate. I mean, I wrote Toward a Meaningful Life for that reason. I did 60 days for that reason. It's not, I didn't come from nowhere. It's coming because I have nothing to do with my life. It's driven by this mission. How do you translate all this into personal relevant terms? Because Mashiach, at the end of the day, the world, every individual on earth will be living with godliness, will be living with sense of purpose of why we're here. So if we can't achieve that even with a Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, on a very basic level, you're definitely not going to achieve it on the Mashiach level. At the end of the day, what do you think Mashiach is? Ice cream growing on trees? World peace? Those are symptoms. What it is that every person is aware of their purpose, of their mission, why we're here, and they're not distracted by materialism and by the moment and by instant gratification and by money and power and control. That's in a nutshell. And each of us has to envision, yes, what if Mashiach comes tonight? What will Kingston Avenue and Eastern Parkway and your life and your home and your family look like? Start with that. If you can describe to me in a lucid, intelligent way, in even a minute or two, what will the world look like? What will your world look like? If you can envision that in a real way, then the second question is, so how do you do now to prepare to get there? I think most people can't answer that question because they haven't really thought of it practically. Yeah, we know Beis Hamikdash will be in Yerushalayim. I don't have to quote to me the Psukim and the Chazal. I'm talking about in your personal life, what will be different? Will there be a pizza shop? Will there be sushi? Will we still do our jobs? What will happen? So many people say, well, we'll go to Israel. But yeah, what happens with our lives? What happens with our family? What happens with everything that goes on? I mean, And I'm talking about real answers that you can feel comfortable saying, you know what, this is an intelligent answer. I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot, but answer that question. Like in anything, if you don't know what your product is like, you definitely can't build toward that product.
So what if at this point in time, speaking very specifically about myself, my job right in this moment is really just to be raising the children.
But raising your children toward what direction?
To also build a Yiddish Hasidic home.
Okay, but so how do you infuse Mashiach into that conversation? That's your challenge. I didn't say to you to drop what you're doing. Of course not. Mashiach has to be infused in anything we do. If I'm a teacher, it's infused in my teaching. If you're a mother, it's infused in your mothering. If it's a person who's a nurse or a doctor or whatever it is, Mashiach is not exclusively, whatever you're doing, the Rebbe says to put the aleph, right, of Hashem into Goyla turns it into Geula. So the question that you have to ask yourself is, what can I infuse? How can I infuse my home and my children and the education of them with a Mashiach? What does it mean? So that you need to be able to answer even to your children. What will the world look like, and how do we build a world like that? I'm just giving some issues here, some language and some tools, but this really deserves much more than what we're talking about. I'm just touching the surface here. As I said, since we're on the topic, we might as well, You want to make a second if I'm bringing about this?
Yes.
Yes.
What, beginning now or another time? Well, listen, I just posed a few questions and challenges. Let me hear what your thoughts are on that, and then I can tell you more, because I think the first thing, look, I am a communicator. I'm a teacher, I'm an educator. Not perfect, but I believe I can do it to some extent. And the first thing to do is to open the minds of whoever you're speaking to think differently. When, there's an expression, I mean, I coined this expression. I don't know if I heard it somewhere or on my own, I don't even know at this point. Maybe I'm plagiarizing. I don't think I'm plagiarizing it. I think it's so it goes like this. If you think what you thought, and you say what you said, and you do what you did, what are you going to have? What you had. You understand? Because if nothing changes, they say nothing changes. You think the same thoughts, you speak the same words, you do the same actions, what's going to be the results? The same results. They say insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. So let's be very blunt. If Golus is still here and the Gul is not here, in the fullest possible way, so you can't keep doing what we've been doing if you want different results. I know we all want Rahmanas from Hashem and from the Rebbe, and let them just bring the Gul. I am the first to vote for that. But meanwhile, we need to do more than we're doing, and that's the challenge that we have. Because if you don't, you're going to get the same results. Rahman al-Islam. I hope not. But I always tell people, and they're shocked when I say it. I say, 25 years passed since the Rebbe, since Gimel Tammuz. What stops another 25 years happen? When I say this, Lubavitch just jump. They say, Chaz v'shalom Rahman al-Islam. They said Chaz v'shalom Rahman al-Islam 25 years ago. I was there. So I'm not saying it because I believe that's what's going to happen. But you have to shock people somewhat and provoke them. Say, what? It's like you're running a business, and your business is supposed to succeed a certain way, and it's not. So someone's going to say, we don't want to talk about why it's not succeeding. We just want to continue doing it. No, if you want it to succeed, you need to talk about what didn't happen till now.
I think in a way it's simcha. The Rebbe does say that our generation that our drive should be from simcha, not from fear.
Did I say?
I can't have another second.
Did you get the message now that I was driving fear in someone's heart? I was not. I was just pointing out that if you're an adult, you have to be aware that if you're not going to do something, you're going to have the same results. That's not fear. From my point of view, that's a motivator. You know what? Want to do it with simcha? Do it with simcha. Bring the goal. But how do you get people off their behind, so to speak, pardon the expression, if you don't shake them up a bit? Because we're comfortable. Let's be honest. We are comfortable. Did anybody lost 1 second of sleep because Mashiach didn't come?
Yeah.
Who?
Me.
Yeah, or because you had a headache or you had other things bothering you. Because Mashiach didn't come? Okay, so you know what? You're the first person I've met that told me they actually lost sleep because Mashiach didn't come. You know what? I never.
Personally, I feel they lose sleep because they see.
No, they lose sleep
Loss,
if you see a
and
tragedy.
Like I wouldn't have to experience that loss.
No, that I understand. I'm talking about just Mashiach, not
That's
without
what
the
I'm
loss.
saying. I'm saying you can't beat that. I don't think.
I know it's very difficult. You know why? No,
Good morning. Mashiach was only right here, right now.
Exactly.
That's not what we
Exactly,
do.
because unless you know what Mashiach is about, then of course, because look, life is pretty comfortable for most people, let's be honest.
Yeah.
We live in comfortable. We're not in the Holocaust, thank God. We're not in the Gulag. We're not being arrested. We could sit in Fabring. We can be as Jewish as we wish. We live in very comfortable times. I'm not saying we don't have challenges. God forbid, there are tragedies. You see it. People, some have poverty, some have other challenges with the children and so on. I'm not saying there aren't, but it's not comparable. Where would we be 80, 70, 80 years ago if we were in Europe? We wouldn't be sitting around a table eating sushi. That I could tell you. We'd be rounded up, Chmana litzlan, I didn't want to say it, with our children, and we know what would happen.
Is it like saying,
So yes, they for sure were waiting for Mashiach, because by then every second was a nightmare. The Rebbe says a number of times, today the challenge is greater because we're comfortable. And when you're comfortable, you know what comes with comfort? It's a thing called apathy. You all know that word? Indifference, complacency. The guy that asked his friend, what's worse, apathy or ignorance? And you know what he said? I don't know and I don't care. That's apathy. It's basically the kiss of death. And we are very apathetic. I'm not taking away. I'm sure you're a great mother, and I'm sure everyone here is a great, whatever you are, your family and so on. But regarding this, there's a lot of apathy. I don't think it's deliberate. It's not because we're malicious. It's because it takes work to really live with Mashiach. It's not so simple. Doing mitzvah neshek, or mitzvah tefillin, or mezuzah is relatively easy. I mean, still have to do work, but go put on a boy after bar mitzvah tefillin, a girl and women lighting candles. It's tangible. The question is how much you'll do it, but it's not a mystery. Mashiach is far different. What is Mashiach? What's the product of Mashiach? What are you supposed to do exactly? You're supposed to talk to someone. You're supposed to teach them. You're supposed to love them. So it's much more complicated. Because what does it entail? It's more of almost a mind shift. It's a paradigm shift. It's a mindset change. What life is all about, the purpose of life. But this really, as I said, I'm telling you, does not. If any of you are really intensely interested in this, you contact me. Trust me, this is my pet peeve. This is what I do. I'd be happy to talk to you about ideas. But you have to first be real willing. I am not going to. No, look. I'm not naive. Everybody's busy. Everybody's got their stuff. I don't know if all of you are ready to really invest in that. You as a mother should do exactly what I said. You have to figure out how to. I did not say you go talk about Mashiach and ignore your children. For sure not. It's about how you infuse them with the Mashiach feeling. So the question is what that means. What's Mashiach? What is Mashiach? You're teaching them Torah. You're teaching them mitzvahs. Teaching them Shabbos, Kashrus, Tefillah, Yadayim, Moed Ani. I'm sure you're doing all that. Question is, where's the Mashiach within it all? That's what you have to answer. There are answers to that. It's not a impossible. And each of us in our own way, that's how we have to think. What should I say?
In the meantime, between now and our next February with you, can you give us some, maybe one or two places to turn to so we can start that work between now and when we speak to you next?
I'm not the only one to speak to. You could speak to other people too. As a matter of fact, I would encourage that. The way we make noise is by provoking people. So if I'm provoking you, hopefully I am, or else you're all going to sleep peacefully tonight. So you should provoke others. I don't mean provoke in a negative way. I mean make it a conversation. It has to be compelling. When the Rebbe spoke about Mashiach, you saw he cared. He didn't just talk about it and say, okay, let's move on now. Next topic. He cared. And I'm not saying we're a Rebbe. We're not going to be on that level. We're not sensing Geula. The Rebbe tasted it. The Rebbe knew what Geula is. He knew what Golus was. We're far away from that. But we could pick up a little of the passion and a little of the intensity. And all you got to do is turn on the sikha and a recording and hear how the Rebbe screams and yells about it. So the question is, how do we make that a conversation in our families, our friends? Because this is how things happen. When there's an apathy, you don't talk about it. Okay, it's something that will happen when it happens. If you really want something to happen, it has to be a conversation. It starts with a conversation. I'm not even saying you have to have a plan, but at least to talk. So what I would suggest is, you guys get together how often? What's this group? Every week?
Yeah.
All year or only?
Oh, yeah.
So how 60 days different? You just use that as during that period.
Yeah.
But it's a once a week get together.
So we have different share, we have different programs.
So practically, I would, everything comes with a challenge. I would look at it like this. You challenge each other with a big question. The question I asked here tonight. Translate Mashiach without using the word Mashiach into simple English. That makes it an exciting, passionate, and urgent thing to aspire to. I would love to see what your answer to that. That's one thing. It's not going to be so easy as you think, but it's not also so hard. And it's not a quiz. I mean, I have my answer. I've worked on this. I think about it. But think about it. Think about it. And then comes step 2. What can I do to get there? What are the things that can be done to get there? And again, no one's asking us for miracles. We're not here to build a Beis Hamikdash Shlishi. That's not our responsibility. Or to make Tches HaMesim, or to do all the other stuff that we read about. There are things we could do. And there are real sikhs from the Rebbe on this. The sikh of Achri Kadeshim and Emer Tavshin Nun Aleph. Give me a little hints where to look. Where the Rebbe talks about Geila and Geula. It's a very powerful sikha. And it really comes down to what do we do now that can make your little corner of the world more Mashiach-dik, more Geula-dik. I think we do everything. Everything is on both levels.
Universal feels pressure.
But you have to,
You know what?
to achieve your own personal gula, the ultimate gula.
Right, like that's what that was my thoughts until, and then at one point in the conversation, it
No, I believe
universal, like
because you
design for all
why is it a
universal.
contradiction? When a Jew does a mitzvah in their own privacy of their home,
Right,
we
it has
know
universal impact.
exactly, but it's personal as well. So the same thing with Mashiach. There's things we do in our own personal lives, and there's things we can do on a more universal level. Look, I'm a writer, so I can write a book that could reach many people. But some of you may have other talents. You may have graphic design, music, other ways that you can some way use the platforms of technology to reach. You could reach hypothetically millions of people. I'm not saying that it's not one size fits all. Everybody has to look at their life. If you're a mother that's dedicated to being a mother, that's the primary thing. But I'm sure your children go to sleep. You do what the Rebbe wanted us to do more. It's not just. So we have to look at our talents. We have to look at our opportunities and our gifts and see how we're using our time. And can we maybe collaborate with others to get some things done? That's how I would begin with anything. It's like if you wanted to start a business tomorrow. You sit down with a few like-minded people and say, I'm good at this, you're good at that. Let's put our heads together. We have to think like Mashiach, like a business. I don't mean I don't mean that in a grubber way, in a materialistic way. I don't mean money. I mean as a business, like a venture. It's a venture that we need different skills and talents to put our heads together to do. These are practical suggestions to get the ball rolling. And see what comes up. I think one person should take notes, see ideas. I think once you put ideas down, you can ultimately see, these ideas are not bad, they're pretty good. Maybe they can be worked upon. Maybe then you start seeing who would be good at doing this, doing that. And I don't know what act will tip the scale. It could just be do that, and the Rachmei Shemayim will open up and Mashiach will come. We don't know what it is, but definitely doing nothing is not an option.
Well, that kind of comes back to the whole conversation about cheshvan.
Yeah, exactly.
What next?
Yeah,
right?
I'm applying cheshvan to Mashiach now. Yeah, like cheshvan to me compared to Tishrei is post Gimel Tammuz compared to pre Gimel Tammuz. Put it that way, because there's a month full of holidays. I remember dancing with the Rebbe. I remember blowing the shofar of the Rebbe. I remember Yom Kippur with the Rebbe. It was beyond words. But now you don't have that. It's a memory for me. It lives in me, but it's still a memory. Now I have to create it myself. And where do I do it? 60 days was one of my creations as a result of what the Rebbe inspired me to be. That's how each of us have to think. Now, each person is different. I happen to be a writer, a communicator, a teacher. So I use my skills. But you all have skills. You all have unique skills. You have skills that I don't have. You have things you can accomplish. And remember, collaboration is the name to the game. You don't have to do everything yourself. I was just told somebody, a bacher came to me and said, what could I do? It was right after Tishrei, just a few days ago. So I said, what are you good at? He says, I like design. I like design. I like creating online stuff. So I said, hook up with somebody with content. And why don't you send out a message every week? Find the platform, social media. I mean, it's a joke today to do, to be honest. We do it all the time. You're WhatsApping and texting all the time anyway. So why don't you do it with focus? And you start building I said, you start getting it out there. Messages. And with a nice design, get people's attention, use your creativity. And he's doing it. It doesn't take a lot if you really focus yourself. But sometimes you have to bring other people because not everybody has the same strength. Some people are more visionary and are leaders. Others are good at implementing. I think if a few people put their heads together, you can then come up with great stuff, great ideas. And it all takes what's called simas lev, care. Look, I commend you. 7 years ago, you came up with an idea. Here's what, you could have easily found 25 reasons not to do it. No money, I don't have time, I have a family, but you did it. This is a perfect example. You used your skills and you did it. and it's a tremendous. Right. Exactly. No, and I'm sure if we look at each one of you, I just want to make sure that you understand. I'm not suggesting you're all doing nothing. It's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying compared to what the goal is, we haven't reached the goalpost yet, So we have to, but I'm sure all of you in your own way can be that active and so on. And at the end of the day, why are you coming together? Because you're bored? Or maybe that's the reason, could be. But no, because also you want this to be a motivator to empower you. And I can assure you, when you feel empowered, it'll help you in shidduchim too. Because you meet guys, they like people who are empowered. They don't like people who are, just like you wouldn't like a guy that just, what do they say? It's the word I want to use. Somebody that's like lost at sea. There's a word I want to use. Floundering. You don't want a floundering person. Now, again, I'm sure you're all accomplished. I'm sure you're great. And so it's not at all musar. I hope you'll take that in the right way. I'm really saying it more for motivational purposes, not in any other way. Yeah.
I was just wondering, I'm on like the newer end of things, and like growing up, like my mom's the one who first told, like I remember the moment where she first told me like about the concept of Mashiach. And it was just because like I went to public school and I heard from my Christian friends about other things, and she was trying to clarify things. But like now as an adult, when I like want to share something with her that I learned or something like that, anytime that like the word Mashiach comes up, it's like an allergic reaction, and she's not the only person. It's just like
it's an excellent point.
Like what is it that
I don't know.
how do you change somebody's perspective on that?
I'll tell you. Some of you listen to my classes or programs or anything. I talk about this a lot. No, no. I'm going to say what I said. Just think if some of you heard it, you'll be familiar with it. As a communicator, I can tell you one of the art of communication is not just saying and conveying an idea well, but it's also knowing what not to say. I could even tell you that probably more on what not to say than what to say. It's like the guy that came to Socrates, the philosopher, and said, I want you to teach me public speaking. And he was ready to pay him. So the guy, to show off, starts doing his public speaking in front of Socrates. He's speaking, babbling and bulbing, Finally he stops. So Socrates says, well, it's going to be twice as much for my fee to you. Charge you twice as much. Not just, whatever it is, double. Why? He says, because first I have to teach you how to shut up. And then I'll teach you how to speak, So in speaking, communicating, one of the biggest challenges is the word stereotypes. So I speak about this a lot. That's why I'm wondering if any of you are familiar with this. And it's an unbelievable thing. And that is that words are loaded. In my real talks, when I talk about these topics, I don't use the word Mashiach. I don't use the word God. I don't use the word Torah. So I'll share a story. In my early years when I taught classes, it was for people from the arts and entertainment industry. They were secular Jews, mostly Jews, some non-Jews as well, very spiritual. But their spirituality, they would tell you, came more from Zen Buddhism and LSD and stuff like that. And here I was talking spiritual stuff from Jewish sources, Chassidus, Kabbalah. But I realized I was at a disadvantage because people don't know this language. The word God, Torah, for them is a Woody Allen joke, which has all the negative connotations. And there are hundreds of them. If we had the time, I can give you all my anti-religious jokes here, because they're full of stereotypes. So I'll give you one. Guy gets lost in a hot air balloon. Two guys get lost in a hot air balloon, and they don't know where they are. They finally maneuver, and they yell down to somebody below, where are we? And the guy yells up, you're in a hot air balloon. And then a gust of wind comes by, whisks them away, and they're still lost. They're back to square one. They're lost as ever. And one guy looks at the other and says, who is that? He says, that was certainly a rabbi. He says, how do you know it was a rabbi? He said, because what he said was true, but irrelevant. Yeah, we know we're in a hot air balloon, but that's not what, but it's irrelevant to the discussion. This answer I've shared, and most secular Jews laugh and laugh because they all have that experience. And there's many more. So I realized I was speaking to people who grew up in a culture Well, religion is a joke. Well, religion is condescending and angry and punitive and filled with guilt and punishment. And a lot of imbeciles, they see religious people as being very judgmental and narrow-minded. This is the perception. And I'm saying it up front because I'm quite aware of it. And I myself grew up in this community, so I'm aware of it also from the inside. So how do you communicate to people who have those stereotypes? You could tell them it's a stereotype, but they are ingrained with it. They grew up with it, like the reaction you just mentioned. So I tried an experiment. This is the experiment I tried. None of you ever heard this story from me? Can't believe it because I've said it so many times. Okay, so be it. So I tried an experiment. The experiment was like this. Instead of using any terms from Torah or God or religion or Judaism, I created my own language. So instead of God, I used higher reality or the essence of it all. And if it was a particularly new age group, I used like expressions like undefined layers of unconscious energy or something like that. You know? Yeah. And instead of Torah, I used the word blueprint or roadmap. Instead of mitzvahs, connections. And instead of Mashiach and Gula, I used destination. So here I was pontificating and waxing eloquent about this journey to reach the essence of all reality, following this blueprint, making connections, and ultimately reaching a total fusion of form and function, energy and matter, soul and body, the sublime and the tangible, the transcendent and the immanent. This is a total seamless flow as we reach the destination of our journey. This was the language I was going on for hours, week after week. I never used any other terms than this. And the people, I have to tell you, were mesmerized. They loved it. They were saying, it's unbelievable, this stuff. And there was not one word I used that, in a way, would doom this effort. Why? Because there was no words they can latch on and say, oh, Torah, this, Mashiach.
There's a negative connotation for other people.
Or either means nothing to them, or it's negative, yeah.
Well, like you said earlier, you have to come with your own definition of Mashiach.
Exactly. So here's what happened. A few weeks pass. A guy comes over to me. His name was Kenny Vance. He's actually a group. There was a rock group, number one group called Jay and the Americans in the 60s. He was a singer. He comes over to me before one of the classes. Listen to this. He says, Rabbi Jacobson, or whatever you call me, Rabbi Simon, he says to me, are you talking about God? He was like, so I said, yes, but shh. Don't spoil it for the others. And he didn't. And I continued. What did I learn from this? That language is everything. For people who have an issue, and I would say this even for people who are not turned off by Mashiach. You say the word Mashiach to most people in this community, or Lubavitchers, it's not the real Mashiach. It's a word. It became a word. But most people don't even know what it means anymore. Yeah, they understand. It's a human being, that house of David, that will come and bring the Geula. I'm not talking about that. What does it mean? What is really Mashiach? What's Geula? Because these words become traps as well. Where we just, Mashiach, we're all waiting for Mashiach. Can you tell me what you're waiting for exactly? What is it that you're waiting for? And I don't mean the end of tragedy and disease and death. We all know we don't want that. No, positive. Tell me something positive about it. So my answer is, every case, I don't know if you can do this. The challenge is, how do you speak to people who know the words without using those words until you get the point across that has nothing to do with the words? Is not going to be a trap. That's my long answer, but that's really what it comes down to. And it is an art. It takes creativity to do that. It's not so easy. You have to really know your stuff. Because remember, words are also crutches. If I say to you, Rebbe, you all know what I mean. But if there was someone here that never met a Rebbe, doesn't know what a Rebbe is, I can't just say Rebbe. What does it mean? What does the Rebbe mean? Or I say Torah, you know what I mean. I say Rosh Hashanah, most people know what it means. I'm not talking about how you know, but so these are crutches. They become words that we just culturally use. Like I say, Kingston Avenue, you know what I mean. What happened to someone was never in this community? They don't know what Kingston Avenue is. And I think good communicators know how not to take for granted words, and they really care about their audience and the people they're speaking to, or even if it's one-on-one, and you look for words that create a connection, not a distance. I know King Stanley it's not going to frighten anybody, but it's still a word, like saying someone will say, oh, let's go to 7-7. I'll say, what's 7-7? So I have trained myself not to take for granted these things. So when I speak about it, I explain what I mean when I say something, until people can relate to what you mean, not just a word or two.
I'm sure it's like when you're becoming from, you go to this place and you're like completely lost with everything they're saying, right? But then you go to like another more like Kirabi place and you're like, oh, I get what they're saying, but like you go to in the beginning in the place that you're.
But this is also, we're talking about is communications about anything.
For sure, in general.
Even about mitzvah. Someone says to you Shabbos. Why should I keep Shabbos? Shabbos, you do nothing all day. So it behooves you then to go explain what Shabbos is in a beautiful, heartwarming way. Anyway, I know you